Till a man falsely imprisoned for 10 years spent most of his time at the library to study law and prove his innocence, and then became a lawyer to help free other people who have been falsely convicted. This guy is telling us, we know you didn't do it. They haven't proven their case. The best defense is a no defense strategy. His attorney was clearly a master strategist. A husband and wife can't be charged for the same crime. Daddy horny Michael. Pop Pop gets a treat. George Michael. When's that voice going to drop? Reminds me of that one Sopranos episode where Adriana is watching some made-for-TV movie where a woman is on the stand and is asked a question about her husband, and she turns to the judge and asks, "Your Honor, isn't there some law that states a woman can't testify against her husband?" And then Adriana gets all excited thinking she doesn't have to testify against Christopher if the FBI decided to charge him, and she later finds out that that isn't actually true. Haha. Wait. USA doesn't have law which prevents you testifying against yourself or family member if you want to. I thought it was protected by the Fifth Amendment, guess not. Spousal privilege. That's what made Adriana's assumption so funny, because she got that info from a made-for-TV movie. Haha. Apparently that isn't true, or at least not exactly true, according to the episode. Guys, it just reminded me of a TV episode. Wasn't stating it was correct or not. And she didn't want to testify against Christopher if she had to. There are two exceptions in the USA. Your spouse can choose to testify. But since they gain, aka can get everything in divorce and make a uncontested clean break, voluntary spousal testimony is easily cast into doubt. The second exception outside of marriage, aka the stuff before or after marriage. While protection exists even for divorced couples for anything said during marriage, there are exceptions to before/after, which are a case-by-case basis. But engagement period can be protected, or even reconnecting and being together again after divorce. Pretty much we go back to why voluntary testimony is easily cast into doubt. There is a legal intermingling. Your lives become one, which can give large reasons to lie. If you wish to remain together is essentially being compelled to testify against yourself. If you wish to end it, you're testifying for gain. I was just going off of what an episode of a fictional TV show. I wasn't saying it was right or wrong, haha. Someone downvoted me like I was stating it as fact. It just reminded me of the show. But thanks for the info though. Appreciate it. Wait, what? Do you guys have to testify against your own family? What the fuck is wrong with your justice system? Take to the sea. But he got to become a lawyer along with room/board for free. Meanwhile, other students spend similar number of years studying to become a lawyer and coming out with 100K in debt. Who's the real prisoner here? He went to college on his own dime after he was released, so screw LSATs and law school time to commit a felony. If you happen to be poor and black, you don't even need to actually commit the felony. Even just poor is good enough for some people. At the time of the last presidential election, I, Brit, was working for a US company which puts on a couple of pretty high-end conferences each year. The boss had put a ban on political discussions, yay freedom of speech, amongst employees because there was such strength of feeling for and against each side, and she was concerned it would have an impact on morale and cooperation. However, one of the conferences coincided with one of the debates, and of course there was a good deal of election-related discussion going on amongst the, predominantly Republican, for what it's worth, delegates. Not wanting to do anything to alienate those attendees, the ban was lifted in cases where we were asked our opinions directly, and one of my erstwhile colleagues ended up losing his job as a result. One night one of the delegates, a notorious prick, representing one of our biggest client companies, had had a couple of beers too many and started singing Trump's praises and pouring all sorts of scorn on Hillary's head. I was there but noped out very quickly, mostly because I hated this guy and didn't want to stay up drinking in his company anyway, so I didn't see what happened, but apparently the guy started making increasingly right-wing statements, including something about how education in prisons should be banned because on the outside it's so expensive and convicts shouldn't have any reward for being imprisoned, hence the link to your comment. I'm not just on a random digression. This seems insane to me, but it appears there was some support for it from at least one other delegate there. Now, my then colleague's brother apparently spent quite a significant proportion of his early life in prison, I think for armed robbery, but turned his life around inside and ended up getting some decent qualifications and is now, I think, an architect. The colleague didn't take kindly to the delegate's opinions and tried engaging with him, telling his brother's story, but the guy not only shouted him down saying that people needed to stop thinking of prison as rehabilitation and start thinking of it as punishment, but also implying pretty heavily that the brother was innately criminal. My colleague is mixed race. At some point my colleague lost it and told him to fuck himself. He was out of a job the next day. What was astonishing to me was not just that the guy even had those opinions in the first place, but that he seemed to have some support for them from others there. It's such a bizarre mindset to me. Surely it's just common sense that time in prison should be used to rehabilitate an offender and make recidivism less likely? Surely it's just common sense that time in prison should be used to rehabilitate an offender and make recidivism less likely? Of course it's not. Here's how common sense works as far as prisons go. Top of the list is pure revenge/retribution. If someone does something bad, they should suffer. Notice this reaction on basically any response to any video or story of someone doing something bad. This rhetoric will win elections, because its appeal is broad and appeals to the fight instinct. Next up is that prison should be there to keep the non-bad people safe by ensuring the bad people are locked away. This rhetoric will also win votes, but not as many as the above. It appeals to the fear instinct, which while still instinctual is considered weaker than the fight instinct. Rehabilitation is an afterthought that few bother voicing support for. This rhetoric will lose you elections, because it involves spending money on bad people who should be locked away from the good people who would be footing the bill. It has no instinctual appeal, and only appeals to reason. The result was a conviction with a stunning 28-year prison sentence for Adams, 20 years for another teen who couldn't pay for representation, and an acquittal for the third, who had hired a private lawyer, and called the alibi witness. Things that make you go Not a fan of being in a system where you have to hire a professional to defend yourself in court and another professional so you can pay taxes. Take me back to 1801, not really though. A good portion of the people in the US don't need a professional to file their taxes, or even a paid software. They need to know how to read the 1040EZ and or their state's equivalent. Taxes are only hard when you start getting fun things like property, companies, multiple revenue sources and more. Many of the bigger states, California, New York, even have free filing for people whose tax situation is not hard. I commend this person more than I can describe. Imagine the system screwing you over like this. Somehow this person didn't lose faith in their time or the system that falsely imprisoned them and managed to become a solution to a terrible problem. I love this. Me too. There used to be entirely too much faith placed on eyewitness reports, and that led to a lot of these wrongly convicted people. You'd be amazed at how many convictions are made without even any witnesses. Just a confession extracted under torture is all that's needed to convict people most of the time. I've been listening to a podcast called Wrongful Conviction with Jason Flom. You'd be amazed at how often this happens. Most of his guests have gone on to help others that were wrongfully convicted as well, and the story of how they got screwed is sadly always similar. A life lesson that I can't teach is to not play the game that you know you're gonna lose. He put his time in to learn a skill and didn't boast about it, and he held his cards. Then, he dropped the straight flush and won his freedom and wisdom. Wisdom cannot be understated. Whatever happened to the guy from Serial? Did he get out in the end? He's getting a new trial. He refused a DNA test. He didn't refuse a DNA test. He's been granted a new trial by pursuing ineffective assistance of counsel, rather than applying to have evidence tested for DNA which could potentially yield nothing conclusive as to his innocence, or, sure, potentially prove his guilt if he did it. The state, which is still fighting the ruling of a new trial, has also not bothered with any DNA test. I couldn't find any threads over there discussing his culpability. Can you link me please? I thought that the whole time I was listening to it. He seemed like a really intelligent guy who was trying to get out of the mess he'd put himself in. Save you from pop-ups. Raised on Chicago's South Side, he decided to go to the University of Wisconsin for a party, where he and his friends met a young woman and had what he describes as a completely consensual encounter from beginning to end. 3 weeks later he was arrested. An officer informed him that the woman said she was raped, and that he was being charged with a group sexual assault along with 2 others. He argued she consented to sex with the group. Hard to prove she didn't, but his lawyer at the time didn't do as well as he could have. Didn't do as well as he could have. You could read the he in both forms and it's still right. Nice. Took me a second. Nice. The he in as well as he could have could fit either the defendant or the lawyer. The lawyer in the normal sense of the phrase, but it also works for the defendant since he became a lawyer in prison to prove his innocence. The lawyer didn't do as well as he the lawyer could have. The lawyer didn't do as well as he the wrongly accused man who then became a lawyer could have. That's so thoughtful. Thanks Abe. I thought they meant the defendant didn't do as well as he could have 3 weeks prior, or he wouldn't have been accused in the first place. Terrible I know. The man that was falsely accused did a better job at being a lawyer than his actual lawyer. The poster is pointing out that it reads both ways. His lawyer at the time didn't do as well as the lawyer could have. vs. His lawyer at the time didn't do as well as Jarrett Adams, story subject, could have. The pronoun could be describing the guy who got imprisoned and then learned how to lawyer or his original lawyer. It could mean the lawyer didn't do the best job or the lawyer didn't do as well as the future lawyer would have. That's a nice double entendre. As a guy, this is my worst fear regarding casual hookups. You feel like you're going to have a good time and then if the other person makes a false rape claim, then you're screwed. Even if you come out as innocent, your image and social standing is ruined forever just because of a false accusation. Save the texts from before and after. There's no perfect defense and it's hard, even if found not guilty, to shake the reputation of an accusation. But at least text messages can corroborate your story. I agree, but the point being made is a person shouldn't have to save and collect evidence to prove their innocence. They should be innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I agree. Just covering your bases. Thank God I'm gay. Gay guys can have group sex without feeling so much shame that they lie and put everyone in jail. But who treats when you go out to a restaurant after? Do all the tops split the bill for all the bottoms? I think they usually go Dutch rudder. Good question, I have no answer. I like how your username tells us exactly where you stand in life. It's a thing. I always text the woman the next day to say, oh, you were great. Did you have a good time? When they respond, I hang on to that message and store it somewhere safe. That way if they ever go nuts later, I have proof of consent. It is paranoid, but I had an ex-girlfriend go to the police once with a non-violent allegation against me that was completely made up. She thought I was cheating on her, and this was her way of trying to punish me for it. I actually proved to her that I didn't cheat on her, and she immediately called the police to tell she didn't want to pursue any charges anymore. It's like she saw them as her personal thugs. Some study at a university found that 5% of the rape allegations filed with the police at that university were proven to be false. In many of those cases, the women even admitted later that the charges were false. Another 30% were not pursued for various reasons. Changing story, probably wasn't a crime based on circumstances, no idea who the person was, etc. So, most rape allegations are legit, but 5% is not statistical noise. This means that a large number of women chose to try to ruin someone's life because they were jealous, angry, ashamed, or just crazy. Those lacrosse kids lost a year of their lives, and so much money in lawyers to defend was turned out to be an obviously innocent case. I've never heard of gay dudes doing this. As a lawyer, this is very impressive. 99% of folks that try to learn the law on their own have no idea what they are doing. They'll just pull a few out of context case quotes or statutes into a courtroom, and when they don't get a ruling in their favor, they'll just argue the system is against them. This guy went to a decent law school and passed the bar and obviously figured out how to really practice law. The strongest argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. What is that quote from? It's both hilarious and unfortunately APT. Winston Churchill. Also quoted as saying that democracy is the worst system of government imagined, except for all the others. As someone who has had to live for 5 years of being falsely accused of something, this kinda hits home. I mean, I did some stupid shit as a kid. I've done stupid shit all my life, I guess, but I always owned up to it in one way or another. It's when a person stands up, points a finger at you in front of God, the law, and everyone under the blue sky, and does the whole false witness thing, and you can't do a darn thing about it, is when you just kinda give up on life. You don't give up on the justice system, it exists for a reason. You just kinda give up on everything else. You don't sleep. Your dreams become nightmares. You want to sleep but can't because you are afraid of the dreams, or more afraid of the reality you're waking back up into. What amazed me was people just knew. I didn't have to explain anything. My friends, family, anyone I ever came into contact with just knew. You take the punches and look at people in the eye best you can. Because you know if you scream loud enough to ask God why me, loud enough for God to hear you, you don't want the answer. God might respond, why not? I'm not aware of any theisms that say the world was created perfect also say that the world as it is how it was meant to be. If the world was perfect, then you wouldn't have free will. Some are born rich, some are born poor. Look at the guy in the article, the whole system was against him and he managed to climb out of his situation and become a lawyer. Maybe if he never went to jail, he probably would have never become a lawyer. Of course, injustice is injustice, but it doesn't come from God. Nobody can tell what is right and what is wrong, what is righteous and what is evil. Even if there is a God, and I had his teachings before me, I would think it through, and decide if that was right or wrong myself. I am a law student and I saw the man speak at the ACS convention. He is a genuine inspiration, not in a corny corporate kind of way, like a real good dude. Had everyone on the edge of their seat. Also his story is the story of the system too, so it's like mind-blowing. I feel so bad for the people in worse prisons who would love to do this, but will never get that opportunity. Good on him for educating himself and getting out of there. As a Chicagoan, I am proud of this Chicagoan. There are times I am uncertain about what I want to do with my life and it freaks me out. But if the cost of having unwavering certainty was to be wrongfully imprisoned for 10 years, I guess I should learn to live with the doubt. That's pretty awesome. And also ironic how he was able to use the jail's resources against them. I'm sure they went and removed all books having to do with law after that though. Oh no. Ugh. I wonder if there is some protection for prison libraries in the law. This is why no state should have the death penalty. Because shit like this happens all the time. I agree, but not for this reason. If someone is caught on camera, killing repeatedly and claiming they will do it again and again, then yeah, their life is forfeit. However, it takes so much to execute that it isn't worth it. It's a huge waste of time and money for all involved. It hurts society more than the criminal. And that's with a 100% no contest guilty person, which is rare. It's got to be so hard to not just give up by year 5 and just say I'm a criminal now. So many prisoners always talk the talk while they're locked up about turning their life around, turning to religion, no more gangbanging, no more drug use, be there for the kids, but that's just because you're currently grounded. Everyone can be a good little boy while someone is watching you 23 hours a day. This guy stayed focused for 10 years and got his education like a lot prisoners do, but actually kept his eye on the prize. I actually went to law school with him. Good for him, wish him the best. I feel for this guy. To be through something like that, and then still have the drive to turn around and turn your angst into this constructively powerful thing of positive impact. There is a tendency for many who have survived a hell to not want to even look back, even for a second, to reflect on what they went through. It can be that painful no matter how necessary it might be to do so, they just find it that hard to look back. Say his name. Thanks for watching. If you could like, subscribe and comment best Reddit stories for more Reddit videos.